I've been thinking about this. How long have I been thinking about this? A little bit, but like not too long. Relatively recently, I was talking to one of my siblings. I had asked if they had seen the trailer for the sequel of Beetlejuice with Jenna Ortega, and I was just like, "Oh, are you planning on watching this?" And they were like, "Well, I feel like that I have enough secondhand knowledge to be able to just watch it and be fine with it. But I feel like that's one of those movies that you have to watch the original first." So I said that, and I guess my sibling was shocked. And I'm like, "What?" And they were like, I didn't I I didn't know that you hadn't seen it." I'm like, "Oh, yeah, no, I haven't seen it. I just never got around to it." And they were like, that's really surprising to me. I do want to understand what's going on in the sequel. I have decided that I am gonna use this as an excuse to watch the original and then to possibly later watch the sequel, but I don't think I could make it interesting enough to make a whole video about it. So I'm gonna do what I do on this channel, and that is make something. I found this really cute fabric. So here's that fabric I was telling you about. It is, I believe it's 100% cotton. So I washed it and dried it and ironed it, and the pattern that I will be using is the Penelope Palazzo pants pattern that I got off of Etsy. I printed it off a little bit earlier today, and it's really cute because it has this kind of configuration that'll go up on the waistband here. I think it looks cute. I'll leave the shop link in the description. I'm gonna start by measuring all of these pieces out. I'm gonna start on that, and then I'm gonna go ahead and watch the first one and see how I'm feeling after that. One thing I didn't notice about this pattern before I had it all printed out and started cutting out the paper pieces was that it is net. It does not have seam allowance, so I am going to have to add in seam allowance. But yeah, that's where I am right now. I went ahead and I have attached interfacing to these, marked out where the seam allowance is, and then I went ahead and attached interfacing, and I did all of that, and I also cut out the legs. It just occurred to me that I didn't do any seam allowance on the trouser legs. So I feel like as long as I continue doing a good job with the stripe matching, I won't have too big of an issue with adding extra panels if I need it. I do need to go look in my stash and see what kind of notions I have so I can finish this up. I just don't want it to look bad, okay? It's chugging along, and I'm getting there. I'm feeling better about this than I have a lot of things. I had been worried that it wouldn't close, which it doesn't, but I didn't record any of it because it's a weird angle to try and get. Hmm. Hmm. I don't hate it, but I feel like it might be a bit too high up. So I could have gotten, I didn't have to do this black section, which I did on the back too. I also feel like if I had done the appropriate seam allowance, that's why it's important. If I had done the appropriate seam allowance, I wouldn't have had to add this extra bit, and it wouldn't be so bubbly. I actually really like them. I like the waistband and how it looks. I just didn't have enough faith in it to give me the coverage I needed without adding more. So I will remember that next time I make pants with this with this pattern. Last night I watched the original Beetlejuice. The original movie came out in 1988. It's about 90 minutes. I think what I was anticipating was that there was going to be a lot more Michael Keaton. Spoilers, by the way, spoilers. I was expecting a lot more Michael Keaton because the movie is titled after his character. Also, they were very, very loose about the rules for summoning the character. In the ad, it said you needed to say his name 3 times. Like 2 minutes in, I think, maybe 2 minutes into the movie, they die. And not what I was expecting at all. Again, I don't know what I was expecting, but that wasn't it. They have the handbook for the recently deceased. And then for the rest of the time that they're kind of on their own in the house before the deets get there, his character is reading the book and then kind of summarizing it for his wife. That spoke to me. So every time that he was just like, well, it's not something that you can really condense like that. It wasn't nearly as scary as I was thinking it would be. I doubt I'm gonna watch it again just because I don't think I would get anything from watching it again. But I am kind of looking forward to the sequel. Still have questions about how you would summon this character. There was a musical, and during a part of it, and I didn't watch the musical either. Then there was one song where he is trying to convince Lydia to summon him, and he says very specifically, you need to say my name 3 times. 3 times it must be spoken, 3 times unbroken. So in my head, that means you need to say his name 3 times in a row without saying anything else. You would need to say Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice to summon him. You couldn't say Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice. Are we sure? Yeah, we're sure? Okay. Beetlejuice. That doesn't work in my head, at least, because you've said something else. You've broken it. You're saying something else. And in fact, I think in that song, it's like, okay, I can do it. And she's like, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, and then she starts to, she's like, because, and then she goes into a song. And then she sings a whole bunch of a song, and then she does it again, where she's like, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, being dumb and being smart, or, something like that. What are the rules? Gina Davis' character says his name twice, and then they, pause, and Alec Baldwin is like, go ahead, and she says it again. So she didn't break the flow. She just hesitated and someone else said something. But every other time it's like, there is a time when Lydia is this close to summoning him where she has said his name twice, and then Gina Davis and Alec Baldwin come back through the door, And she's like, oh, I was just about to summon. She starts to say his name, but then she stopped, and it's like, so what are the rules for this? But I don't know, I haven't watched it yet. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. I went ahead and I got rid of the black that had been along here. I didn't like it. It didn't really add much to anything. And these actually fit a lot better. I added different ribbon. I had gray ribbon before, and I added some green because I thought that was much more appropriate. And I still hate the zippers on the sides. These, I was actually able to pull them up without undoing the zippers, so I'm not sure how critical they were to the design of the trousers. I watched the sequel yesterday, Beetlejuice 2024. There was more Michael Keaton, which was good. An hour and 44 minutes, so it was 104 minutes. Seriously? Spoilers. Spoilers about this movie that came out like 2 weeks ago. Spoilers. Okay, I'm editing right now, so I figured that this would be the best time to bring up some things that I meant to and didn't. If I had this to do over again, I don't think I would have picked doing the pants, even though that is like the easiest part of this. Because it turns out in the first, it's the funeral scene, and Astrid is wearing this long wool coat. Depending on what stills you look at, depending on how clear the picture is, it's either like a black or like a really dark like a wine burgundy color. So in the first movie, Beetlejuice is actively trying to get people to say his name. He's trying to get people to summon him, and it feels like in the second movie he is actively trying to stop people from doing that. If someone starts saying his name again, he like stops them before they can even say it once. And it's like, well, from my understanding, at least in the first movie, if you were summoned and if you're having a conversation with someone, it doesn't do anything for his name to be said again. You can't double summon him. I don't think. I would have done the coat. The coat is beautiful. I do feel like this one had a bit more of a horror element to it. There was a bit more, I don't know, like on one hand it wasn't very gory, if that makes sense, but on the other hand it was a bit more, I don't know, it was kind of, it's weird to explain. It was PG-13, so they did use their one fuck. They gave a singular fuck, but then there was another instance where he almost said it, but then said like fudge or F or something like that, and I was like, really? First things first, I would definitely, you need to watch the first one first. Having seen it once, regardless of when, should keep you up to date. But I don't know if I would have been more confused if I hadn't watched the original literally the day before. There was one thing that stuck out to me, and when I noticed it, I immediately got sad, because I was like, oh, if the rules are all the same from the first movie, then this makes this a lot more sad. and I got kind of emotional. It is kind of sad to say that was the only time I got emotional, but no, the only time that I semi felt a way was either annoyance at certain characters being dumb, or this one thing that they didn't do anything with. Having watched the original film literally the day before I watched the sequel, I don't think it was even a full day. Having watched it that closely, I don't think I got this wrong, and I don't think I'm gonna look it up, because if I got this wrong, then they did a bad job of explaining it. But in the original film, there were a couple of people who very, very offhandedly either made some type of acknowledgement of or reference to having committed suicide. At one point, Lydia was writing her suicide note. It did seem kind of weird at the time that they didn't do anything with that, because they made a kind of a big deal of her writing out parts of it and then scratching it out and then writing it differently and then balling the whole thing up and throwing it away. But then they didn't do anything with it. Also, Lydia Dietz from 1988, defenestrate would have been a great word for you to have used to talk about throwing yourself, hurling yourself. You were looking for a word. Defenestrate would have been perfect. Anyway, one of the characters is like, oh, well, if I would have known that, I would have made different decisions, or something like that. Shortly after that part, he had said something about, well, I heard if you commit suicide, or if you kill yourself, then you spend your entire afterlife as an office worker or administration or something like that. And that was it. That was all they talked about with that. And it was kind of confusing to me at the time that they even brought it up, because it was literally, when Otho said it, it was a throwaway line. And when it was talked about with the characters who had presumably gone through with ending their own lives, it was just, oh, well, I would have made different decisions. It's like, okay. I feel like if you're even going to bother bringing up something like that, you need to do more with it. And that, in and of itself, is the thing that almost caused me to have an emotion. When you're talking about death, when you're talking about a couple of characters dealing with death, even if it's in a comedy or a dark comedy, I should feel something. And I didn't. That's the thing that kicks off everything, is the dad. I want to say his name is Charles. Lydia's mom contacts her, and she's just like, hey, so yeah, your dad died. The way that she said it, she said, your father left me. She said what anyone else in that position would say was, he's divorcing you? He left you? Why would he do that? Or like, what's going on? And that part was kind of funny, because she's like, why would you say something like that? No, he's dead. And it's like, okay, so he's dead. So all of that to do with suicide didn't go anywhere in the first movie. But then they brought up that you spend the rest of your afterlife as an office worker or as administrative. Again, I didn't look up which one they said, but I think it was referenced to you're going to spend the rest of your afterlife doing paperwork. And then in the sequel, Astrid is Lydia's daughter. And I guess Astrid's dad died just a little bit ago. I want to say, I don't think they actually said when he died. At one point during the film, Astrid is tricked into going into the underworld, or whatever it's called, and he basically hands her a book and says, read this passage and it'll protect you. You're going to be able to go through. Giles would be so upset with her. He would be so disappointed because his, like, one of his rules is don't speak Latin at the books. But she gets down there and she's being dragged away, and she sees her dad at one of the ticket booths doing paperwork. But she says, "Dad," and he's like, "What?" And, like, he recognized her and everything. He's sitting there doing paperwork. So it took me a minute to be like, oh no, are they trying to say the reason that Lydia doesn't want to talk to Astrid about her dad, and the reason that she can't see him, is because he didn't die by accident. He didn't die on an excursion in some far off country. He committed suicide, and she was trying to protect her daughter from knowing that. Nope, not the case. Because that never comes up. The dad sits down with both Lydia and Astrid, and he's just like, "Hey, I want you guys to know that I still check in on you every once in a while, and I don't want my death to be the reason that you guys aren't getting along. If his death was clearly an accident, and if it wasn't, then tell us that. Make it slightly more cohesive to the rest of it." Yeah, and then at the very end, after having spent the entire movie acting a fool, it's the character Astrid who's just like, "No, that contract that you have signed is entirely null and void because you what was it? You violated code. You violated this certain code, so that makes this whole contract void." And she's saying it with such conviction. If you would have shown at any point that this is a character who is definitely like, this is a rules follower, and no. It was an interesting film. I didn't hate it, but there were a lot of things that I would have changed to make it more interesting, in my opinion. Yeah, I think that's it. There's not much I have to say about the trousers themselves. I hope you are having a wonderful day. And I'll see you guys later. Bye.